Hello and welcome to India's World. Today, we focus on Afghanistan, which is still reeling from the devastating truck bomb that took place on the 31st of May, killing over 150 people. What jolted the system and the citizens even more was the fact that it took place in Kabul's diplomatic quarters, the highly fortified green zone, inside which the Indian embassy as well as the India House is located. Almost a week later, a rocket landed at the Indian envoy's residence. Thankfully, of course, there were no casualties reported. The Indian government, of course, played it down as well. But is there more to the story? Is there a deliberate attempt to target Indians? And even if not, the repeated strikes in the most fortified areas with mounting casualties demonstrate a steadily deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan. So can India help the country on that front? Joining us on the debate today, we have an esteemed panel. We have Vivek, Katju, who is the former ambassador to Afghanistan, also served in various Indian missions and various positions in the Ministry of External Affairs. We also have Mr. Anand Sahay, who is a senior journalist and editor. He writes regularly columns and is a recognized expert in politics and international affairs. And we also have Dr. Savita Pande, who is a professor in the South Asian Studies Division in JNU, also an author and has worked extensively with the Center for Policy Research and NITSA. Welcome to all of you, of course, joining me on this show here. If I could start with you, Ambassador Katju, first. The Kabul police chief, of course, said at a press conference that this intended target of that big bomb blast that took place on the 31st of May was the German embassy. Like I just said, a few days later, a rocket landing at the India House there. Of course, it was played down, but is there worry for Indians in Afghanistan?
Well, I think it is doubtful if this rocket actually was meant to target the embassy. My own impression is that it was a general sort of launching of a rocket or
in that area.
Yeah. And it so happened that it landed in the tennis court of the compound, of the residence compound. But having said that, the fact is that the security situation is deteriorating very fast. The terrorist groups, the Taliban, the Haqqani network, which has been blamed for the May 31st attack, and ISIS, which is growing, seem to have penetrated the security net of the Afghan capital. And therefore, anyone living there faces a certain danger and faces some insecurity.
Yes.
This is troubling. It is more troubling because we know that a large part of the source of insecurity lies across the Durand line in Pakistan. And the Pakistanis are not changing course. Their old positions regarding the way they want to safeguard their interests in Afghanistan continue. President Ghani yesterday itself has articulated again the National Unity Government, which he heads and of which Chief Executive Abdullah is an intrinsic part.
Yes.
Articulated the frustrations of Ghani. Ghani on his part has done everything to influence Pakistan to change course. But the Pakistanis are not relenting. I think there is one other troubling aspect which is domestic. Which is the stability of the Afghan government, of the NUG.
Yes.
I only hope that the leaders of Afghanistan, principally President Ghani, show enough wisdom to ensure that in the face of these terrorist attacks, because there were demonstrations.
Yes.
And it shows a certain amount of impatience on the part of the Afghan people with this insecurity, that because of all this, President Ghani has to show this wisdom so that he is able to hold the political process and the government together. Because should the government split at this time, because there are rumblings, if it splits, then Afghanistan will be faced with a very difficult situation.
Absolutely. Mr. Sahay, you know, this explosives-laden truck, it goes past the Afghan intelligence agency's compound. In fact, former President Hamid Karzai's residence. It goes through, it enters an area where there are all these embassies, like I said, where India's embassy is there as well, the US's embassy is there, the German. You also have, the headquarters of the US NATO Military Command, CIA station. You would imagine this is a place that is unpenetrable. However, this truck goes in there, and it's the kind of destruction which the country has not seen since 2001. And, everyone's saying that it's at a risk now to slip back into that chaos that was in 1990s. That's the kind of indication that are at least coming from security experts, if Afghanistan doesn't grab hold of the situation at the moment. The most important thing, though, is that this was clearly a message to perhaps not just the Afghanistan government, but perhaps to the other countries as well, whose embassies are, of course, housed there. But, no one's claiming of who's really giving that message. What was the purpose really of this blast?
Tracy, you've said a number of things, and each of them is important.
Yeah.
But if you've seen that place, that whole area, Mr. Hamid Karzai lives close by.
Yes.
The Indian embassy is close by. The NATO headquarters are close by. Geographically, it's all within, let's say, half a kilometer or 3/4 of a kilometer in that broad area. But where the truck bomb went off, right? I don't know what the Kabul police chief has said. That the Germans were the target. I don't know. But what I think, the people of Afghanistan, the ordinary people, they are the target. They know that the major countries, India, Germany, America, and so on, they won't be scared off into submission. They won't run away, leaving everything behind, leaving their policies behind, and so on, right? But typically, all of these attacks, or a large number of them, occur fairly early in the morning, between 7:30 and 9:30, 8:30, when there is so much traffic on the roads in that particular area, because that's the way to offices or on many areas, and going to the airport. I've had a close shave more than once, So those who plan these things, they know it. 150 people died that day. I don't think there are 150 people inside the German embassy.
Okay.
Right. So idea was to take a big toll, create a big impact in the city, so that the people of Kabul, the capital city, they get fed up with the government.
Yes, and that is exactly
as
what
they
happened.
did. They went out for the first
Yes,
time. Such big demonstrations happened. But the messages are deeper than this. Messages are deeper than this. And for me, really, I am sometimes extremely confused about who's doing what and with what purpose. I used to live in that city at one time. I visit there frequently, practically every other month, right? And yet, one has heard all kinds of people in high positions with a lot of experience, politicians and ordinary people also. But today I am coming to the sense, broad sense, that the US forces, who themselves face a lot of danger there, right? And they fight, but their tactics are all completely wrong.
Okay.
They have thoroughly alienated the local Afghan people completely. And unless there is a wider change in American policy, and that change must be reflected inside Pakistan.
Okay.
The extent of aid they give in the name of fighting terrorism, ultimately it just keeps the military shored up.
All right.
Fully and nicely.
If
that does not change, as Ambassador Katju was saying just now, the focus of everything which happens inside anywhere in Afghanistan, and lately last few months the trouble spots have been in Kabul, but it's what's happening behind the Durand line. So I really see, this is what I wish to say, that no great useful purpose is being served by the stationing of the American military, although in reduced numbers. But even there were 100,000 of them, I don't know what
if that would
they succeeded in doing at that time.
Okay, we'll have to take a quick break here. We'll delve deeper, of course, after the break, where we'll talk about India's role in an increasingly tense AFPAC situation, and that's where, Professor, I'll come to you on that. Quick break here. We'll be back. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching India's World. Professor, if I could come to you now, we were of course talking about, whether India has a reason to worry as far as its nationals are situated in Afghanistan. And of course, we understand that at the moment they are not a particular target. But having said that, just days before that big Kabul blast, the US intelligence community did inform the Congress that Pakistan does not want heavy Indian influence in Afghanistan and will most likely turn to China to offset New Delhi's sway in Kabul. How do you view this?
Well, absolutely. I have been saying this for a very long time, that post-American withdrawal, India's biggest challenge in Afghanistan will be from China. The Chinese have economic interests there. The Chinese have their friends in Pakistan who have a common border with Afghanistan, unlike us whose border is under occupation. So, the Chinese will be at an advantage once the Americans withdraw and things become, in the sense they have already won contracts for the mines, etc. It is their advantage. It will be competitive with them in terms of economics. But the other thing which I would talk in the context of India is that Indian policy was clear post Taliban when India went into Afghanistan, that we are here for a long time to come and stay, and it was evident in the infrastructure investments which India did there. Once you invest in infrastructure, your presence is marked there and you are going to be there. Unfortunately, till India became specific target, they were not being protected by our security people. Why is it that India did not insist on Indian army being there for the protection of these institutions, even if we are going to hand them over to Afghanistan? After all, so much of investment has been made, and also Afghanistan security, it should also have been India's concern. Now I hear about 15,000 troops. I don't know how true it is. It has come out in one of the American
reports.
Right.
In fact, that was going to be my next question, really. Yes. About this report of 15,000 troops that are perhaps going to be sent by India. And there are even talks that the NSA is in fact going to be
from the Indians, but it has
right.
come in these reports, and you read it on the net all over. And I, for one, has always held that India should insist. Why only military training? Why only equipment? People should also be there for the support of these institutions which you have built. You cannot invest so much of money. You cannot help Afghanistan unless these institutions are going to stay. Whether Indians are target or not, these institutions will be targets. And therefore, I think one big mistake which India has done right from the beginning is that to succumb to the American or international pressure of not maintaining our security men for the protection of the institutions, for the protection of the individuals.
Okay, Ambassador, you have a point.
I think it will be disastrous for us to put troops on the ground in any kind of combat role in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Now, what about security of our installations? I think at the time when the border security, when the Kandahar, the Zaran's Dilaram road was being built, we did have a detachment of security personnel to guard that road, but they were very small in number, and the larger security was provided by Afghans, which I think was the right approach.
Okay.
It will lead to incalculable repercussions if we place troops on the ground. Yes, we've got to provide security assistance. I think that should be through providing lethal arms in a manner that the Afghans want. I think also training should increase, but I'm certain in my mind that putting people on the ground there will not be in our interests.
Yes.
Because it will evoke an enormous adverse reaction from our well-known adversaries who have the capacity, when you have troops on the ground, to provoke people, local people, against the presence of these troops.
Yes.
We have the example of the American presence.
And we've just proven, and we've just said that it doesn't really yield much.
And we are certainly not the kind of power that the Americans have or are.
All right.
So, given all this situation, we've got to be cognizant of our limitations in these matters, and therefore I would suggest that the way of prudence is better.
All right.
Okay. I think I must say I have to agree with what Vivek Katju ji is saying just now. Having our own army on the ground, we had the Sri Lanka experience, IPKF experience, which was a wholly different setting, I must say. But here, for the reasons he outlined, but he did not explicate, and I don't wish to do so either, you know, our neighboring country and factors of that kind.
Yes.
And apart from the fact that we are simply not there as a power, I think even the Chinese would hesitate. They may put troops in the POK, which is controlled by Pakistan, but even they would not put troops on the ground in Afghanistan. It's not a matter of what the size of your army, etc. is. I think that is not the right way to go about. It's true that the highway that Vivek spoke about, we had our own, ITBP guards there. In fact, the ITBP is still there to guard the Indian embassy, to guard India House, things of that kind. And the institutions we've built, the installation, like say we built Parliament. Parliament building is under attack quite frequently.
Yes.
If we put a detachment of Indian army soldiers, we won't make it any more secure. Or for that matter, our electricity that we get from Uzbekistan, which we have made possible through transmitters.
For the dam.
For the dam. All of these things. The Afghans themselves are very conscious of how important these things are for them, and they are extremely friendly towards us. For this very reason, they guard it as best they can, and sometimes our ITBP people do get involved in this, but not for the purpose of fighting at all, you know. In fact, India has had a very good policy that we give the Afghan government whatever they ask of us, if we are able to do so.
Yes.
Right. They have
but
not.
Clearly keeping the situation in mind now.
Yes.
Isn't
yes.
there a
I'm just coming to that.
Yes.
They have not asked us for our military troops on the ground to fight their battles. What they have asked us to do is to give them more aircraft, more they can use in certain terrain, certain caliber of tanks, artillery, hospital units in the field.
Yes.
Afghan soldiers are very good, and this has been attested to by the US and NATO commanders who have trained them. Where they lack is, you know, people die, they can't be carried here, troops can't be moved quickly, they don't have, and here is a wider policy, and here the government of India should intervene in my view, which is this, that right from the start, under a carefully thought out plan, the Afghanistan army has been kept at the stage of a light infantry and no more than that. The Americans and the Pakistanis were completely one on this. They did not want Afghanistan to have a certain kind of military or an air force. With much difficulty, the air force is slowly growing now, where we have also made a small contribution, thank God for that. But we should contest in proper forums, in proper bilateral forums, as well as other forums where, you know, multilateral forums.
Yes, all right.
This whole notion of denying the Afghanistan army a status above that of a light infantry, that must go. We should give them, I think Vivek was talking about this, we should give them heavier caliber weapons. We should give them training for these weapons, etc. And I can tell you, ounce for ounce, pound for pound, the Afghan army is as good as armies in the neighborhood. If they have the right equipment, they are fine fighters. What they lack is some training of a certain kind and certain kinds of vital equipment.
We'll continue with that thought. We'll take a quick break and be back on India's World. Stay with us. Welcome back. If I could come to you now, Professor Pande, you know, Iran and India have claimed so, Afghanistan now as well, after the May 31st attack, you know, that Pakistan is waging a proxy with impunity. And we are seeing, of course, with all these three countries. Iran, of course, took it to a different level. You know, the security chief, of course, also said that, you know, if our men are attacked from across the border, then we are going to hit back. Pakistan, of course, reacted to that in a predictable manner. You know, so is it time for all three, do you feel, to join hands, perhaps, you know, respond in a concerted manner to Islamabad's, you know, what they are calling a hybrid war?
I see that, you know, cross-border, we used to say, and cross-border has become an established policy in Pakistan. And it's really surprising, any country with any kind of semblance of military strategy and all tries to fight one enemy at a time, and you find them, you know, involved in 3 different places in the same way, cross border attacks, and angering, or the security chief was there first to tell them and then to threaten them that we are going to do this. And you know, it's happened repeatedly in Sistan, Baluchistan and the Baluchistan border across. They feel that they are promoting Sunni militancy in Iran, and especially after Pakistan Saudi Arabia relations, which have happened recently, their army chief has gone and joined there. They are the Iranians are of course very angry. Yes, it is time to be, but you know, Iran particularly is a place I have found that Pakistan has been able to maintain its balance with Saudi Arabia as well as Iran, unlike India, which has not been able to do, but this has changed in the last 5-6 years. And I think that this is the time to collaborate with Afghanistan and with Iran. Let me tell you, there's tremendous goodwill for Indians in Afghanistan, and we are not viewed or, you know, in the same lens as the Americans do. The Americans became unpopular because they got involved in their war, which the Indians are not. My argument for placing Indian army or Indian military boots there is for the protection of these installations, for the protection of the people. And let me see, every country is viewed in totally different background where you are. As I said, that barring the period of Taliban, Indians have been extremely popular in Afghanistan, and I see no reason why they would judge us by the same yardstick as they judge the Americans or the Pakistanis. And I think apart from giving these military, these training, the Americans themselves said, yes, the Afghans can be trained into it, and once they are trained, we will leave. I think the same thing Indians can also do, so long as Afghans are not trained into the level that it is required to prevent the kind of things that are happening. I think it is important that India maintains its troops there.
All right. Ambassador, you of course are of the opinion that we shouldn't be sending troops. Instead, we should be sending arms if they ask for it. If we should be sending, we should be offering training. But you know, I would also want to know if Afghanistan has an effective industrial security force. Do they have something like that? And you know, can India help in that front?
They have very little industry, so they don't need an industrial security force like our CISF.
Yes.
I think Professor has raised a very important point about the security of the institutions that we've built and other Afghan institutions. My point is simple. If the Americans, with all their number of troops and NATO and ISAF, has not found it possible to provide these institutions and installations and general security, can Indian troops make a difference? I think no. The danger is that our adversaries will use certain methodologies and ideologies and perhaps theologies to provoke a reaction. India is certainly very popular. It is popular because we are perceived as independent, as people who don't intervene in Afghan affairs. In Afghanistan, there is a natural revulsion to the presence of foreigners, foreign troops in particular. And while they realize that they have no option but to have the Americans, deep down they don't like it. Therefore,
that's changing too.
Yes, but deep down they don't like it. I think there may be people who may change, but there is an Afghan character. And I think we should work within the parameters of that character. The real issue is in Afghanistan is in Pakistan. And no American president or world leader has been able to handle that situation. That is where our focus should be, to expose Pakistan and try to get the world community to focus on them.
Is that the solution that eventually lies then, Mr. Sahay? I mean, you know, does the ball eventually lie in, you know, Ghani's court, and it's for him to eventually...
ultimately the ball lies in the court of the Afghans themselves. I think they can do a splendid job if left to their own devices. They need the assurance from the regional powers and the world powers that their security situation will not be permitted to be overturned every day the way things are happening now, which means if all those who matter got tough with Pakistan and said enough is enough. You know? That is all the protection that the Afghans require. They don't want your boots on the ground. They can handle everything themselves. You look at in spite of 40 years of non-stop war, the advances they've made in literacy, in health and so forth, that will be a lesson to in women's, rights, ensuring women's rights. 30% or 26% are represented in parliament more than most countries in the world.
Yeah.
You see, these are things to be proud of. Their media scene. What they need is Nijat, relief from military attacks from across the border through, these shadowy outfits.
Okay.
And nothing more. They don't want your.
I need to give the last word to Professor, ma'am. Where do you see, as far as security in Afghanistan is concerned, and where India can help?
As I said, we should have a proactive policy, not only just building installation, but their protection is also a responsibility and should be so. We should not let our neighbors dictate the agenda. The Americans were there, their soldiers were doing different job from what our soldiers would do. Their policies are different. I think India is the only country which is actually positively involved in reconstruction, has spent more money than others. Others may have put in more aid into Afghanistan, but for Afghans, I think India has done far more than any of the other powers present there. I don't think we should let any of these dictate agenda to us. Rather than we should proactively and make Afghans self-sustain, till then we should take care of their security.
All right, that's all the time I have here on India's World. Thank you so much, Ambassador Katju, Mr. Sahay, and also Professor Pande for joining me on this debate. We'll come back to you next week, of course, on another topic, but that's it for the moment here. Thank you.